Hello children. In the last video, we did a pre-reading activity on the biography of Nelson Mandela. So now today we are going to read this chapter, Long Walk to Freedom, Nelson Mandela, in detail. 10th May dawned bright and clear. For the past few days, I had been pleasantly besieged by dignitaries and world leaders who were coming to pay their respects before the inauguration. The inauguration would be the largest gathering ever of international leaders on South African soil. 10th May was the day when Nelson Mandela sworn in as the first black head of state South Africa. It was after years of struggle that his anti-racist party came into power. Until then, the seat had always been occupied by white presidents. That is why the author, that is Nelson Mandela, referred to the day as bright and clear. It was a morning full of hope. Days before this date, many notable personalities started congratulating him for his victory. The ceremonies took place in the lovely sandstone amphitheatre formed by the Union Buildings in Pretoria. For decades, this had been the seat of white supremacy, and now it was the site of a rainbow gathering of different colors and nations for the installation of South Africa's first democratic non-racial government. For the first time in the country's history, so many international leaders came together for their inauguration ceremony. The ceremony took place in an amphitheatre, which is an open circular building made of sandstone consisting of union buildings in the Pretoria city. Children, I have some clipping of Nelson Mandela's swearing in ceremony. Please watch now how he was welcomed on 10th May 1994.
Lester? Well, there's Mr. Mandela, the moment that has been long delayed, not only in terms of today's developments, delayed from the decades of the struggle for black political emancipation in South Africa. Mr. Mandela greets high-ranking officers of what is now called the South African National Defence Force. He is saluted as would be the prerogative of the President. There's a huge controversies where the leader, in fact, commanding officer there, after receiving the salutes and the handshakes of the senior officers, flanked there momentarily by the Commissioner of Police General Jan Geldenhuys. Van der Merwe, forgive me.
On that lovely autumn day, I was accompanied by my daughter Zenani. On the podium, Mr. de Klerk was first sworn in as second deputy president. Then Thabo Mbeki was sworn in as first deputy president. When it was my turn, I pledged to obey and uphold the constitution and to devote myself to the well-being of the republic and its people. Nelson Mandela was accompanied by his daughter Zenani on his big day. First, the two deputy presidents took an oath. Then when his turn came, he committed to respect, protect and abide by the Constitution and to devote his entire self into the welfare of the country. Just watch Nelson Mandela proceeding towards the podium along with his daughter Zenani and the two deputy presidents taking an oath.
On this extraordinary celebratory occasion of his inauguration as president, having been elected to that post yesterday by South Africa's newly sworn-in National Assembly. Preceded by senior officers of the South African National Defence Force, Mr. Mandela mounts the steps into the amphitheatre.
flair.
In die teenwoordigheid van almal hier vergader en in die volle besef van die hoë roeping wat ek as uitvoerende adjunkt president in diens van die Republiek van Suid-Afrika aanvaar aan die welsyn van die Republiek en al sy mense sal wy.
Lift asseblief uw rechterhand en sê, so help my God.
So help my die drie-enige God, Vader, Seun en Heilige Gees.
Neem asseblief die sitplek in en teken die amptseed voor u.
Will the Deputy President-elect, Mr. Thabo Mbeki, now proceed to be inaugurated?
Will you please take the oath of office?
In the presence of those assembled here, and in full realization of the high calling I assume as Executive Deputy President in the service of the Republic of South Africa, I, Thabo Mbeki, do hereby swear to be faithful to the Republic of South Africa and do solemnly and sincerely promise at all times to promote that which will advance and to oppose all that may harm the Republic, to obey, observe, uphold, and maintain the Constitution and all other law of the Republic, to discharge my duties with all my strength and talents to the best of my knowledge and ability and true to the dictates of my conscience, to do justice to all and to devote myself to the well-being of the Republic and all its people.
Will you
Your Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, distinguished guests, comrades and friends, today all are stirred by our presence here and by our celebrations in other parts of our country and the world confer glory and hope to newborn liberty. Out of the experience of an extraordinary human disaster that lasted too long, must be born a society of which all humanity will be proud. That we, who were outlaws not so long ago, have today been given the rare privilege to be host to the nations of the world on our own soil. We thank all our distinguished international guests for having come to take possession with the people of our country. What is, after all, a common victory for justice, for peace, for human dignity.
Mr. Nelson Mandela also mentions some parts of his speech where he said that everyone by his presence was giving rise to hope for a new beginning. Previous rulers were discriminatory and lasted for long, but the ones who are given the opportunity to rule now, that is the African National Congress, would stand up against discrimination. He is glad to host a ceremony with the presence of global leaders. It is an achievement in itself. There was a time when South Africa, for practicing apartheid, lost all its international political relationships. Now, when there is no segregation on the basis of race and gender, other nations are happy to have healthy democratic relationships. Finally, they have come to power and they pledged to make everyone proud. He thanked everyone, especially the international leaders, for joining them in celebrating their achievement, which is a step towards an equal society where every human will be treated fairly.
We have at last achieved our political emancipation. We pledge ourselves to liberate all our people from the continuing bondage of poverty, deprivation, suffering, gender, and other discrimination. Never, never, and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another and suffer the indignity of being the skunk of the world. The sun shall never set on so glorious a human achievement. Let freedom reign. God bless Africa.
He mentions that after great struggle, they have finally achieved political freedom. His government promised to free everyone of the still existing poverty, hardship, and inequalities of all kinds, along with assuring everyone of a country where no community will be considered inferior. He then exclaims that freedom should rule and may God shower his blessings on their land. A few moments later, we all lifted our eyes in awe as a spectacular array of South African jets, helicopters, and troop carriers rode in perfect formation over the Union buildings. It was not only a display of pinpoint precision and military force, but a demonstration of the military's loyalty to democracy, to a new government that had been freely and fairly elected. Only moments before, the highest generals of South African Defence Force and Police, their chest bedecked with ribbons and medals from days gone by, saluted me and pledged their loyalty. I was not unmindful of the fact that not so many years before they would not have saluted but arrested me. Finally, a chevron of Impala jets left a smoke trail of the black, red, green, blue and gold of the new South African flag. The day was symbolized for me by the playing of our two national anthems and the vision of whites singing Nkosi Sikelel' iAfrika and blacks singing Die Stem, the old anthem of the Republic. Although that day neither group knew the lyrics of the anthem they once despised, they would soon know the words by heart.
national anthem.
On the day of the inauguration, I was overwhelmed with a sense of history. In the first decade of the 20th century, a few years after the bitter Anglo-Boer War and before my own birth, the white-skinned peoples of South Africa patched up their differences and erected a system of racial domination against the dark-skinned peoples of their own land. On the 10th day of the inaugural ceremony, the author was actually remembering the days of past when this whole system of apartheid emerged. It resulted in inequality and inferior treatment of dark-skinned people. They were deprived of their basic fundamental rights. As a result, one of the world's most brutal and inhuman society was born. That day had come about through the unimaginable sacrifices of thousands of my people whose suffering and courage can never be counted or repaid. This equal and free country was a result of sacrifices of countless other men and women who have fought all their lives for this day. I felt that day, as I have on so many other days, that I was simply the sum of all those African patriots who had gone before me. That long and noble line ended and now began again with me. I was pained that I was not able to thank them and that they were not able to see what their sacrifices had wrought. The author wishes if he could thank them all, but unfortunately they didn't live to see the result of their courage. Nelson Mandela gathered his courage and power from all these people and thus wishes to make them proud. The policy of apartheid created a deep and lasting wound in my country and my people. All of us will spend many years, if not generations, recovering from that profound hurt. But the decades of oppression and brutality had another unintended effect, and that was that it produced the Oliver Tambos, the Walter Sisulu's, the Chief Luthulus, the Yusuf Dadus, the Bram Fishers, the Robert Sobequis of our time. Men of such extraordinary courage, wisdom, and generosity that their like may never be known again. He says the oppression policy scared many people and it will take a long time for them to move on. The author mentions that his hard time had its negative impacts, but it also exposed a lot of strong and courageous men who stood up and raised their voice. Perhaps it requires such depths of oppression to create such heights of character. My country is rich in the minerals and gems that lie beneath its soil, but I have always known that its greatest wealth is its people, finer and truer than the purest diamond. He says, does it require that level of unjust treatment to produce such great heroes? South Africa, he says, is rich in minerals and gems, but its greatest strength lies in its people. It is from these comrades in the struggle that I learned the meaning of courage. Time and again, I have seen men and women risk and give their lives for an idea. I have seen men stand up to attacks and torture without breaking, showing a strength and resilience that defies the imagination. Nelson Mandela gained his strength to stand against wrong from all the great nationalists he mentioned above, who have even risked their lives for freedom and tolerated ill treatment but never stopped fighting. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. He says that the courage didn't mean the absence of fear, but the ability to overcome fear. The man who overcomes his fear is called brave. No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. He says one is taught by its society to hate humans because of their skin, color, age, gender, and religion. No one is inborn with hatred. People must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love, for love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. The author's idea is that if people can be taught hatred, they can also be taught love and brotherhood. Even in the grimmest times in prison, when my comrades and I were pushed to our limits, I would see a glimmer of humanity in one of the guards, perhaps just for a second, but it was enough to reassure me and keep me going. He says in their most testing times in prison, when they were being treated brutally, Mandela would see a pinch of humanity and kindness in one of the guards, and that was enough to keep him going. Man's goodness is a flame that can be hidden but never extinguished. So he believes that goodness in human beings can be suppressed but never eliminated. in life, every man has twin obligations. Obligations to his family, to his parents, to his wife and children, and he has an obligation to his people, his community, his country. So according to Nelson Mandela, every human being has its responsibility towards the family and as well as towards the society. In a civil and humane society, each man is able to fulfill those obligations according to his own inclinations and abilities. But in a country like South Africa, it was almost impossible for a man of my birth and color to fulfill both of those obligations. Generally, under normal circumstances, a person can maintain the balance between the two, but in countries like South Africa, it was never so easy. In South Africa, a man of color who attempted to live as a human being was punished and isolated. In South Africa, a man who tried to fulfill his duty to his people was inevitably ripped from his family and his home and was forced to live a life apart, a twilight existence of secrecy and rebellion. He says when a person of color would come up for his society, he would be arrested and taken away from his family, thus keeping them from fulfilling both responsibilities. I did not in the beginning choose to place my people above my family. But in attempting to serve my people, I found that I was prevented from fulfilling my obligation as a son, a brother, a father, and a husband. He says in the beginning, he did not put his people over his family, but it was only later when he realized that in order to be there for his people, he was compromising his duties towards his family. I was not born with a hunger to be free. I was born free, free in every way that I could know, free to run in the fields near my mother's hut, free to swim in the clear stream that ran through my village, free to roast mealies under the stars and ride the broad backs of slow-moving bulls, as long as I obeyed my father and I abided by the customs of my tribe. I was not troubled by the laws of man or God. It was only when I began to learn that my boyhood freedom was an illusion, when I discovered as a young man that my freedom had already been taken from me, that I began to hunger for it. At first, as a student, I wanted freedom only for myself, the transitory freedoms of being able to stay out at night, read what I pleased, and go where I choose. Later, as a young man in Johannesburg, I yearned for the basic and honorable freedoms of achieving my potential, of earning my keep, of marrying and having a family, the freedom not to be obstructed in a lawful life. Here, the author did not have the plan to stand against the apartheid system early in life. Actually, he lived his childhood like any normal child in South Africa. He only had to follow the rules set up by his father or the customs of his tribe. As soon as he grew up and began to learn the facts as to how people of color are treated, he decided to stand against it. He had this urge for freedom from inside. Earlier, just for himself, that is when he was a child, just staying out at night, etc. And later for having a basic life, not just for himself, but for everyone. In Johannesburg, they had to struggle for having a peaceful marriage, family, and basic amenities which everyone has access to, where law and order exists. But then I slowly saw that not only was I not free, but my brothers and sisters were not free. I saw that it was not just my freedom that was curtailed, but the freedom of everyone who looked like I did. That is when I joined the African National Congress, and that is when the hunger for my own freedom became the greater hunger for the freedom of my people. It was this desire for the freedom of my people to live their lives with dignity and self-respect that animated my life, that transformed a frightened young man into a bold one, that drove a law-abiding attorney to become a criminal, that turned a family-loving husband into a man without a home, that forced a life-loving man to live like a monk. I'm no more virtuous or self-sacrificing than the next man, but I found that I could not even enjoy the poor and limited freedoms I was allowed when I knew my people were not free. Freedom is indivisible. The chains on any one of my people were the chains on all of them. The chains on all of my people were the chains on me. Nelson Mandela joined the African National Congress when he realized it is not only him whose basic rights were snatched away, but of all those who look like him. He had this fire inside him to free his people from the injustice. It was this fire that changed the author completely as a man, from being scared to brave, a lawyer to the one breaking the law, a family man to a man without a home, and a lively man into being a monk. It was the knowledge that he and his people have restricted freedom that made him into a selfless man as opposed to before. According to him, freedom cannot be divided. Snatching it away from some was equivalent to taking it away from everyone, and that meant taking it away from the author. I knew that the oppressor must be liberated just as surely as the oppressed. A man who takes away another man's freedom is a prisoner of hatred. He is locked behind the bars of prejudice and narrow-mindedness. I'm not truly free if I'm taking away someone else's freedom, just as surely as I'm not free when my freedom is taken from me. The oppressed and the oppressor alike are robbed of their humanity. He mentions that the need to free the oppressor is as high as that of the oppressed, because the oppressor is bounded by the shackles of hatred. He has the weight of all the people who he has tormented, for he carries the curses of all of their families. For taking away someone else's freedom and making them a prisoner, he becomes a prisoner of biasness. Thus, he is robbed of his humanity and need to be freed. Now, let's quickly have the gist of the whole chapter. Let's start with the Anglo-Boer War. Anglo-Boer War, here Anglo means Britain and Boer means South African Republic and Orange Free State. So there were two wars fought between Britain and South African Republic. The second war between Britain and South African Republic and Orange Tree, the Britain won, and they started to dominate Africans. Now, since the British started ruling them, the Africans were oppressed. There was no freedom. Human disaster existed upon the Africans. Africans were outlaws at that time, and there was continuous bondage of poverty, deprivation, suffering, gender, and other discriminations. Let's talk about apartheid now. Apartheid is an institutionalized racial segregation by whites upon the blacks. People were classified into four: black, white, Indian, and colored, and they were separated due to race. There were many freedom fighters who fought for their country. Nelson Mandela, Oliver Tambo, Walter Sisulu, Chief Lithulis, Yusuf Dadus, Bram Fishers, Robert Sobukwe, etc. were some of them. Let's know more about Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was born on 18th of July 1918 and he died on 5th of December 2013. He was born a freedom fighter and he became a member of African National Congress. He fought for the Africans, but he was arrested for 30 years and released in 1990. Later, elections were held and he was elected as the first president in 1994. His autobiography was Long Walk to Freedom, which is the name of your chapter. Now let's talk about the most important election of South Africa, which was held on the 27th of April 1994. 252 out of 400 seats were won by African National Congress. Nelson Mandela was elected as first black president, from 1994 to 1999. And the first deputy president was Thabo Mbeki, and second deputy president was F.W. de Klerk. There were huge arrangements made for the inauguration ceremony. The South African jets, helicopters, and troops carriers rode in perfect formation over the Union building. It was a military demonstration of their loyalty to democracy to the new government. Highest generals of South African Defence Force and police saluted Nelson Mandela. A chevron of Impala jets left a smoke trail of the new South African flag, that is black, red, green, blue, and gold. And two national anthems were sung, Nkosi Sikelel Afrika by whites and Die Stem by blacks. Now let's throw some light on Nelson Mandela's speech. Mandela took the oath in front of many other politicians and dignitaries of more than 140 countries. He conferred glory and hope to newborn liberty since they achieved political emancipation. He pledged to liberate the Africans from continuing bondage of poverty, deprivation, suffering, gender, and other discrimination. He even said the South Africa would never experience oppression by any other country. The sun would never set in Africa. He prayed God to bless Africa. And according to him, he was grateful to the African patriots who struggled hard to liberate Africa. He was pained since he was not able to see the result of all their sacrifices. Now what he learnt from comrades and from others. He learnt meaning of courage since he saw them risking and giving their life. He saw men tortured and showed their strength and resilience. He believed that brave is the one who conquers fear without being scared of. He gradually learnt that people know to love and don't need to be taught, but hate, on the other hand, is taught, thus resulting in hatred among everyone. He believed that men's goodness is a flame that can never be extinguished. For instance, when he and his friends were sent to prison, he could see a glimmer of humanity in one of the guards for just a second. Thus, he believed that man's goodness can never be extinguished. According to him, a man has twin obligations. Number one, obligation to his family, his parents, his wife and children. And number two, obligations to his people, his community, his country. But a colored man would never fulfill his obligations in Africa due to the oppression and dominance of the whites. No freedom for blacks was there. Freedom meant different things to Nelson Mandela when he was at different stages of life. Now, what freedom meant to him as a student? Well, he wanted freedom only for himself, the transitory, freedom of being able to stay out at night, read what he pleased, go where he wanted to. And when he grew up as a young man in Johannesburg, he yearned for basic and honorable freedom of achieving his potential, of marrying and having a family. He wanted freedom not to be obstructed in a lawful life. But slowly and gradually he realized that his freedom had already been taken away from him. And then he began to hunger for freedom. When he joined African National Congress, he realized that not only he, but all his African brothers and sisters were not free. Everyone's freedom was curtailed. Then only Nelson Mandela's hunger for his own freedom became the greater hunger for the freedom of his people. He believed that freedom is indivisible. Chains on any one of his people were chains on all of them, and chains on all of people were chains on him. A man who takes away another man's freedom is a prisoner of hatred. He is locked behind the bars of prejudice and narrow-mindedness. One is not truly free if he takes away someone else's freedom. Dear children, I hope you enjoyed the chapter, Long Walk to Freedom, Nelson Mandela. Thank you.